back on a Young Turks, Cenk and John with you guys. ROBP writes in on YouTube Super Chat, school resource officer assigned to protect students didn't go into the school, and Trump thinks teachers are going to face an AR-15. Yes, that story broke earlier today. I told you about it, and
yeah,
yes. Now that guy didn't do his job, but even if he had, would he have gotten to the right place at the right time? And
I mean, would he have had a chance against the kid? I honestly don't know.
And the kid had an AR-15. The guard didn't have an AR-15.
I mean, but again, it is his job. That's what he had been there for years. But that's a tough position.
He resigned today. Steven Scale says people like Wayne LaPierre turn dumb people into incredibly dangerous and dumb people.
Yeah.
Derek Martin says that was really unimpressive. LaPierre just connected gun violence to socialism. Say what? And Sexy Speed Racer says Wayne LaPierre is a terrorist, case closed. Members of the day are Albert Savoy and Caitlin Sparks. We've got an extra Rebel headquarters segment for you guys today. So postgame will start a little bit later, but we will have a postgame. We've got aggressive progressive for you guys. We did a wonderful old school with Adam Green, backed by popular demand. Head of the PCCC was on old school last night. All you members, check that out. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. And don't forget, next Tuesday's the first election night. The elections will begin. They will commence. You could actually already vote in Arizona. You could already vote in Texas. And by the way, go to tytnetwork.com/register to go and vote. Figure out how to register and how to vote right now in your own state. But Tuesday night, after the regular show and after Rebel headquarters, we will cover Arizona's 8th congressional district special election. There is a Justice Democrat, Brianna Westbrook, in that race. Make sure you go out and vote. And let me see where we are with Brent Welder. tytkansas.com, TYT member Brent Welder running already 2,582. Let's get to 50,000 so we can get a field team. 126 people have donated. Can I see 150 people donating by the end of the show, okay? It's a little ambitious. Let's see what we can do. All right, John, what's next?
Okay, we got a bunch of stuff. For a little while there, for a few years, we had the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was set up after the Great Recession to actually represent you, to represent regular people against the banks and other industries which would abuse them. And we still technically have it, but unfortunately we also have Trump and we have interim director Mick Mulvaney, who is twisting that organization to instead basically work for those banks and to aid them in coming at you while having the veneer of some sort of consumer protection. And so overall, and we've reported on this a number of times over the past year, Mick Mulvaney has worked to make the watchdog agency less aggressive in actually going after banks and various forms of legal abuse. Under his leadership, the CFPB delayed a new payday lending regulation from going into effect and dropped an investigation into one payday lender that contributed to Mulvaney's campaign. Now we also have something that we want to focus on today though. Mulvaney also dropped a lawsuit against an alleged online loan shark called Golden Valley Lending. The suit says the lender illegally charges people up to 950% interest rates. It took CFPB staffers years to build the case against them. I don't yet know why it took years if they're charging that much, but apparently it did, and they were doing that work for years because this company has illegally defrauded thousands of people out of tons of money. And that's what this organization is there to do. It's to find out where these abuses are, to build a case against them, to take them to court and get money back. Unfortunately, it was shut down, and now one of the investigators in that particular case says people are devastated and angry. Just imagine how you would feel if years of your life had been dedicated to pursuing justice and you lose everything, let alone if you're one of the people that this company defrauded and you did lose everything. And by the way, just in case you were wondering, can you actually charge 950% interest? No, you can't actually charge 950% interest, thus the case. Now,
but before you go on, John, let's just be really clear about that. It violates state and federal law. It's called loan sharking, and it's what the mob does. But I'd be surprised if the mob charged 950%.
No,
because that is so undoable, unpayable. It makes you an indentured servant for the rest of your life. Almost no matter how little you borrow, the interest rate will ramp up so quickly that you'll be paying it back the rest of your life. That's why the government doesn't allow it. It allows for gigantic interest rates. So 35% is fairly normal at the state level, and that is an enormous unpayable. I'll give you context. Donald Trump went bankrupt one of the 6 times, because he went bankrupt 6 different times, because he took out too much, he took out loans that had too high an interest rate for the Taj Mahal, one of the casinos he had in Atlantic City. You know what the interest rate was? 14%. A casino that basically prints money, the house always wins, could not pay back a 14% interest rate. These guys charge the average guy a 950% interest rate.
Yeah.
And that is why it is terribly illegal. It could be illegal, but if the government, now run by the crooks, by the robbers, chooses not to enforce the law because they don't believe in the rule of law, they represent the robbers, well then they just got away with it. They robbed all those Americans, and there's nothing you could do about it because Trump's in office and he put the criminals in charge.
Exactly, and I mean, we've gone through basically every department at this point where the department has a mission statement, it has a philosophy, something it's supposed to accomplish, and so they go out there and they find literally the person best placed to totally invert, to pervert the point of these departments and instead deploy them to aid corporations and the wealthy and well-connected. So that same investigator, by the way, said that he did believe that had they been able to pursue the lawsuit, it would have been able to get money back for thousands of people that Golden Valley had defrauded. But although we've given you some of the general details, I do want to focus on one particular case because it's pretty egregious. There's a woman, Julie Bonenfant, who said, I was literally facing eviction because I was so behind on my rent and I had no idea where I was going to come up with the money, and it was just really rough. It was just misleading. The way it was presented was this loan with that company. I was going to make 4 large payments and then be done. So she sent NPR a screenshot from the website of what the deal was supposed to be. And it says on her $900 loan, her scheduled payments in less than 12 months would be $3,735. Or more than 4 times what she actually borrowed there. So it looks like she didn't actually get the worst interest rate they hand out. She got like twice as good of a deal, actually. But yeah, they expect that, no, you will pay those 4 payments and then you will continue to pay these huge fines and fees afterward. And it can be incredibly confusing for people, especially people who are desperately trying to make ends meet, who are trying to get money quickly to deal with some sort of medical emergency or something like that. And they prey on exactly those people. Now, Mulvaney apparently, although he won't specifically talk about this, he declined requests for an interview. Statements have been put out saying, oh no, I didn't actually shut this down. I had nothing to do with it. It was just career staffers inside of the organization. But sources inside the organization say no, he actually was instrumental in shutting down this case, as he has been in other ones that we've talked about on the show over the past year. And what's interesting, maybe it's not related, but hey, maybe it is that as a congressman, he took $62,000 plus from payday lenders. So weird that he got paid. I don't know what kind of interest rate he's getting on that money now, but probably not 950%, but I think it might have had an effect.
So my favorite part of this was this quote from the NPR story. After repeated questioning from NPR, Mulvaney's press person acknowledged that Mulvaney was indeed involved in the decision to drop the lawsuit. In other words, we tried to lie to you, pretending that he had nothing to do with it, but you pressed us. Yeah. So, okay, fine, he did it. He took $62,000 from the pay lenders, and these politicians, they're all bought so cheap.
Yeah, that's like nothing.
You get away with, God knows how much in fines they would have gotten, tens of millions. I don't know if it would have been hundreds of millions of dollars. You just paid Mulvaney $62,000.
Yeah.
What a cheap little prostitute Mulvaney is. So he then comes into this bureau that is supposed to protect consumers and goes, no, I'm corrupt. I'm just gonna say all that. They would have gotten you your money back. Because it's illegal and they would have gotten you your money back. And Mulvaney says, no, I don't represent you. I represent the bad guys. Yeah. So you're not gonna get your money back. All that hard work in pursuing justice and the rule of law, dropped it overnight, now admits he did drop it, it was him. And one of the women involved, one of the people involved said that she's a Trump voter and feels betrayed. And I feel bad because they said, I feel kind of stupid. But he told you that he was gonna get rid of the swamp. And that was a huge reason you voted for him.
Yeah.
He was lying the whole time. He's a cheap, cheap politician, telling you pretty little lies that you wanted to hear, Then he gets into office and screws you because his donors and Mulvaney's donors wanted to keep their money, wanted to be able to rip you off. And by the way, they can continue to rip you off going forward. Yeah. So the rule of law will not be enforced as long as you're a donor to the Trump campaign and a Mick Mulvaney. It is grotesque.
It's really twisted how this whole thing has played out, that the Republicans tried to stop the organization from being set up in the first place. They tried to stop a director from being installed in the first place. You're probably familiar with her. They tried to defund it, they tried to destroy it, and then finally they just get somebody in the White House and they just put whoever the hell they want in there. And then it still technically exists, but it becomes irrelevant.
Look, I can go on and on in this story because Mulvaney is actually not technically the leader of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. No, but he's not even the interim leader. He's not legally allowed to be the leader, okay? But they don't give a shit. They just strong-armed it. They're like, he is now. What are you gonna do about it, right? And a judge said, well, I can't rule on it now. So they're like, that's it, then we win. Later, there will be a ruling. They are violating the law by having Mulvaney be the head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But he came in like a fucking thug, sorry. And now he's like, oh, all my robber friends, you're all free to go. There's a jailbreak. He'll leave, but that case is gone. They can't bring it back, it's gone.
Yeah.
They're the worst people on the planet. All right, let's do the next.
Okay, let's move on to a similar topic. More corruption for you, this time having to do with a lawsuit over mining safety regulations. And a person named David Zatalzalo, this is President Trump's top official for mining safety, who has a history in that particular industry that we're gonna talk about. And it has to do with challenges to Obama administration regulations, trying to make it so that if mines routinely violated safety procedures, there could be an expedited process of adjudicating that, having some sort of fines or consequences of some sort, which of course the industries don't like, and so they challenged it in court. So that lawsuit was filed in March 2013 by the Kentucky Coal Association, opposing the Obama administration's use of a mine safety rule known as POV, or pattern of violations. As I said, accelerates the penalty process. So David Zatalzalo, the person that I was talking about, is now the Assistant Secretary of Mine Health and Safety. He served on the Kentucky Coal Association Board of Directors through 2014. Through late 2014, Zatalzalo was also chairman of Rhino Resource Partners, kind of a cool name, and a mining company which twice ran afoul of POV during his tenure there. So it's really an interesting situation they've set up, where he was on the board of directors for that coal association, involved with a company that was violating these particular provisions. A couple of years go by, he gets to be in charge effectively of mine safety, and right now is considering whether he is going to be the person to rule on a lawsuit that, at least to some extent, he was the one who pushed for in the first place. So
this is why I love TYT Investigates, and thank you to all the viewers who helped fund it. Because while everybody's looking somewhere else and super important issues like guns, etc., Donald Trump's administration is eviscerating the rule of law, doing wild conflicts of interest and corruption to no end. So our job is to dig in and find where they are. So in this case, great report by Steve Horn pointing out, look, this guy was part of that organization, the Kentucky Coal Association, that sued the group that he now helps to run inside the government. Now that's not new in terms of Scott Pruitt, same thing, head of the EPA, sued the EPA over a dozen times. And Trump's like, oh, you want to destroy the EPA? Wonderful, that's exactly who I'm looking for. You're now the head of the EPA. So this guy now becomes a top official in mining safety because he was trying to destroy mining safety. So okay, that part we understand, although almost no one else is talking about it. And so we find the lawsuit, and then of course, as John pointed out, there's two different organizations that he was on the board of that now are in front of the government agency that he is running. And in the beginning they said, oh, conflicts of interest. No, absolutely not. Number one, he'll get his money out of any mining within 90 days. Did he? Of course not. He works for the Trump administration, still has money invested in mining companies.
Yeah, but only like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
While he's supposed to be regulating mining companies that he's invested in. Now the companies he used to run, he's decided, I'm not gonna recuse myself. I'm gonna make the decision on whether my former companies did the right thing or not. Gee, I wonder which way he's going to decide. Well, I can't quite tell.
Who would better know what the companies were up to?
Than the guy sitting on their board
Insider
before.
knowledge, yeah.
And when asked about it, the Trump administration, and we're the ones who asked them, said, well, I mean, our rule technically is that you had to be outside those companies for 2 years, and he was on the board of those companies in 2014. Technically, he's slightly okay. So I'm sure he has no conflict of interest. He'll you can't find anyone else to make that ruling. No, the point is corruption. It's not the bug, it's the feature. So check out the article. It'll be in the links down below on YouTube, in the description box, and on comment section on Facebook. So our job is to comment on these stories. TYT Investigate's job is to find the stories and cover them objectively. Read the story for yourself. It is a terrible case of conflict of interest, again, within the Trump White House.
Yeah, they did a great job. They continue to. This is incredibly important. The thing is, like, this is the story they found this week, one of several stories this week. But I'm sure that if you dig just a little bit in so many departments, you're gonna find stuff like this. And we need to be keeping tabs on the Trump administration. I know some people don't like that we talk about it, that we talk about Trump and what's going on there, but it is incredibly important. We can't give them a pass for 4 years because in literally every topic you can think of, this is the sort of corruption that's going on.
All right, we'll be right back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you guys. So this is a breaking news story, just happened. Apparently a teacher in Utah took Donald Trump's advice, brought her weapon to school. In Utah, you're allowed to do that. State law allows individuals to obtain a concealed weapons permit and carry firearms onto school campuses as long as they've done safety training. MSNBC.com is reporting this story. So why am I telling you about this? She brought a weapon, what's the big deal? Oops, she shot herself in the leg.
That's awful.
So this is what happens when there are guns. They fire bullets, sometimes on purpose, sometimes when people get angry, sometimes when they want to do a mass shooting, sometimes when there's, and by the way, some of the school shootings, they don't tell you about this, are suicides. They come to school and kill themselves, okay? And sometimes it's an accidental discharge, happens all the time. In fact, I think it was the year 2013, but this happens almost every year at around this rate. 505 Americans died from an accidental discharge of a weapon. Luckily, in this case, she didn't die, but boy, it seems like the idea of bringing guns, teachers bringing guns to school seems so efficient. I bet there'll be less violence. Oops.
We mostly stopped doing these sorts of stories, but for a long time, occasionally we do the story of the guy in Home Depot who accidentally shoots his dick off or something, or the hunter whose dog shoots him with his rifle or something. Like, stuff happens, like, and it might seem crazy. It might be 1 in a million that something like this happens. But Trump said this week that he wants 20% of teachers to get the training and a gun. And that works out to something like 1.7 million teachers and 1.7 million guns floating around schools all over the country. And sometimes they're gonna accidentally fire. Sometimes 1 in a million, they're gonna think that safety's on and it's not. Sometimes 1 in a million, they're gonna take their gun off for literally a minute and put it somewhere where a kid can get it. Or they're gonna think they have a secure drawer, but the students are watching them and they know where it is. 1 in a millions happen all the time, unfortunately. And they're setting ourselves up for stories like this on literally a daily basis.
Kid going in to touch something that he shouldn't touch, or going to a teacher's drawer knowing that it's wrong. How many times has that happened? A lot more than 1 in a million, and the accidental discharges are a lot more than 1 in a million. And by the way, the 505 people that shot themselves in 2013 died. It's not 505 shootings. There was thousands upon thousands of accidental discharges. It was that over 500 people died that year from just accidents with guns.
When I was a kid, I was over at, I'm not gonna be any specific, but at a family member's house, someone in my extended family, and I went into their bedroom and they had a toy gun on the nightstand that I very briefly played with and then put down and went back to whatever the party was or something like that. Except that I found out later that it hadn't been a toy gun. I was a little kid and didn't know, but it was a real gun, and my parents had a gigantic fight with that family member because he'd left his gun out, and it was just sheer luck that I didn't shoot the gun and possibly hit nothing or myself or a family member. And this is a guy that's totally responsible. Like I actually trust him, and he once left his gun out because that's what happens. Because when you bring something and you carry it every day, you don't always have it in the perfect position, always on your body. This is a horrible idea.
How often do you lose your keys? By the way, she's a 6th grade teacher. So thank God no one got hurt too badly. Like I said, she shot herself in the leg.
Hope she's okay.
And it looks like she's gonna be okay. Could have been a lot worse.
Wow.
All right, let's do the last story.
Okay, one more story for you. Philadelphia's new district attorney is Larry Krasner. We've talked about him before on the program. When the election happened, he was a guy that's considered to be different than other DAs. He's gonna change things, and in fact, he already has in Philly. This week, he's taken the significant step of eliminating cash bail programs for a number of low-level offenses. So why would you wanna do this? If you pay the cash bail, then you get to get out of jail. Turns out though, that if you charge someone thousands of dollars to be bailed out, it's really easy for rich people to pay that, and very difficult, if not impossible, for a lot of people of lower socioeconomic status to do that. And so this is I was gonna say multi-100-year wrong, but no, this is a multi-thousand-year wrong. It's, as we're gonna talk about later, it's from medieval times, and it still just exists in a lot of America. But thankfully, at least in Philly, it's being limited. The policies that it's being removed from include retail burglary, prostitution, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, resisting arrest, providing false identification, a number of other things, including some that are classified as felonies, which is one of the significant ways that this Philadelphia change goes beyond some other programs that have tried to eliminate cash bail. And this is not a small problem, this is a big problem. In Philadelphia, about 20% of the people, of the 6,100 people in city jails, are there because they can't afford to pay their cash bail. And so they stay days or weeks or months or possibly even longer just because they don't have the money. That doesn't seem fair to me. I imagine it doesn't seem fair to most people. And it turns out that nationwide, about 60% of all incarcerated Americans are held in pretrial detention. In fact, the numbers are that the number of people in America at any given moment that are simply there because they can't afford bail is larger than the prison population of almost every other country on the planet.
Wow.
And so great job, Larry Krasner. Really fast, I just want to read one quote. I know we don't have much time, but he said this: there's absolutely no reason why someone who will show up to court, is not a risk of flight, is not a threat to their neighbors and community, should sit in jail for days or weeks or months or years because they can't post a small amount of bail. We do not imprison the poor in the United States for the so-called crime of poverty. He's done a number of other things, by the way. Since January, he's purged his office of many career prosecutors, announced his support for city-sponsored safe injection sites for intravenous drug users, and declined to prosecute charges of marijuana possession.
So when you have establishment guys in office, they give you a different drug, the tranquilizing drug of gradualism, as Martin Luther King said. And they tell you, no, not now, not now, we can't do it now, it's not possible, it's not possible, it's not practical. So Larry Krasner was an actual progressive. A lot of progressive groups fought for him. Mm-hmm. He won, and it turns out you can do it. You can do it right now. There's nothing stopping you. What generally stops the establishment Democrats is their donors. They don't want progress. They don't want change. They generally want the status quo. And so if you elect a real progressive, he will do real progressive things like this. So now, my favorite quote comes from Philly.com, who's covering this story. They say that jailing suspects unless they can pay, disproportionately punishes minorities and the poor. You don't say. Well, look, let's leave out minorities for a second. It completely punishes the poor, not just disproportionately, right? So if you can pay, you pay it, and you don't have to sit in jail. If you can't pay, it's because you're poor, and hence it completely punishes the poor.
And you can't work, and you got to get somebody to take care of your kids possibly.
And understand something. So this is not a wild, crazy thing where we let everybody out of jail. No, first of all, this is pre-conviction, okay? Mm-hmm. Pre-conviction, you're supposed to be assumed innocent. Okay, but for the violent offenses, no, they're not letting them out. This is just for non-violent offenses, small level offenses. Excuse me. Excuse me while I drink from my aspiration.com mug.
Yeah. If you're being charged with untimely coughing fits, okay? Why should you have to sit in jail?
Right. So since this is only for small level offenses, non-violent offenses, if you're rich, you're obviously gonna have the small amount of money that it takes to get bail on those cases. Even if you're middle class, you're probably gonna have enough money to have bail. So only the poor stay in jail, but not just that. Since everyone else gets out, you're actually being punished not for doing the offense, but for being poor. Yeah. So that's why you're in prison. Everyone else can go out of prison until they have their trial. If you're poor, you get punished for being poor. You must stay in prison until you have this trial on a low-level offense.
Yeah.
What they did in reforming this system is justice. So thank you, Larry Krasner. Thank you for every progressive group who fought for him and for every voter that made this justice possible. All right, we got to go. I have extra long Rebel headquarters for you guys, and then John and I will do a post game. Bye-bye.